Hey there, Knicks fans. How you doing? It's your boy, Jonathan Macri, coming at you with another episode of the Knicks Film School Podcast. We're recording this on, where is it? Oh, there it is. It is Valentine's Day morning, even though we're coming at you on a Monday. So I wish my co-host all the love in the world on this special day filled with love and love. That's about it, I guess. Jeremy Cohen, how are you?
I'm doing great, John. Thank you. I appreciate the heart. It's very cute. Much
My
love
daughter
to you
put
too.
these all around the house. There's like randomly on my walls. There's little heart stickers everywhere.
You're gonna find those stickers for like the next 12 years, and then you're gonna be like, "Oh, that's from that day. That's cool."
Basically.
Yeah. But yeah, everything. It's a nice day. Beautiful out. Knicks have won 2 in a row. We're gonna have a great conversation.
Yes.
What's not enjoyable about today?
I'm having a beer at 11 in the morning.
Very nice. I'm not, as I just brushed my teeth, but I respect you.
I mean, I've been up since 6, so it's like it's far enough. By the way, I just thought of this because my wife got me a bottle of Johnny Walker Black for Valentine's Day. Did you get a present from your significant other?
No, I'll see her next Saturday, but we don't generally do Valentine's Day gifts.
Okay.
We really never have. I think the first thing that we've done, maybe the only thing, was around the time we started dating. I got her. She loves Stephen Colbert, so I got her the American Dream Ben and Jerry's ice cream,
Very
and
nice.
that I'm convinced that like clinched it. And since then, I've it's just been downhill from there. But the point is, like, that's how I made my way in, and now it's like, you can't leave. I'm sorry. I already clinched it.
If and when you get married, you kind of have to do some kind of gift for Valentine's Day. I'm just going to warn you, that the days of getting away easy those are done. But big shout out to my wife, your girlfriend, for not minding that we do a little podcasting on this Valentine's Day, so that our loyal listeners can have something to start their week with. And it's a good transition because I think this is one of those, you look at our, or so Andrew Claudio tells me, you look at our download numbers. He apparently is obsessed with these things. And he's like, you take one look at the numbers and you could tell when the Knicks are winning and when the Knicks are losing. And this feels like, not because of anything we do, but this feels like a day that a lot of people are going to tune in, because I feel like the vibe is really good right now. Right? I'm trying to think, 5-3 was great. We're 5-3. Yeah, they were 5-3. 5-3 was great, but there was still a lot of this is fool's gold. It's early. Like, honestly, I can't remember the last time things felt this good. Right?
Yeah, I would say that it's, it constantly feels like, well, when's that other shoe going to drop? And
A little bit. Yeah.
We're 28 games into the season now, and we keep talking about the proverbial second shoe. And, there are going to be instances, right? There were some potential 3-point drop off, but that wasn't significant. Obviously, the Knicks have now lost Mitchell Robinson, and Nerlens Noel is no Mitchell Robinson. So I'd be very curious to see what the defense will look like against a team that isn't injured and anemic on offense, like the Houston Rockets or the second half of the Wizards. So, but it's the sort of thing where I don't see how you can look at what we're seeing and be disappointed unless your sole objective is to tank the year away. Because right now we're seeing what one injection of just quality lead guard play in the right usage can do for an entire unit, and as a result, an entire team. And it's fantastic to see. And I know we'll talk about it more. So I'll turn it back over to you. But I don't know how you can be really upset by the quality that's on the court and the fact that it's also manifesting as wins.
Yeah, I mean, and listen, you do this every week, so I'll steal your thunder in terms of the tanking conversation. I'm not sure how. I think that ship. Well, no, I don't want to say that ship may have sailed because, and again, this is what you always do, whereas they are only a game and a half back as we record this right now on Sunday morning, only a game and a half back of fourth in the East. They are also a game and a half up on 11th in the East. So it is, it's again, you mentioned they just lost Mitchell Robinson, which is, I probably buried the lead by not bringing that up first. But I I can't believe I'm saying this. I'm not sure how this team tanks from here. What has to happen? Like, I don't know. Well, I mean, that's the second shoe, but yeah.
I still don't think there is really a quote unquote way to tank unless you trade Julius Randle, which the Knicks are not going to do. No. If Julius Randle, gets injured, which we knock on wood does not happen.
Close call last night, by the way, when who was that? Tate fell on his leg.
Yeah, that was definitely scary.
Oh my God.
So, if something happens to him, then it's a different conversation. But otherwise, the Knicks aren't going to tank. And that's the thing. You can sell pieces without necessarily tanking. Like Alec Burks, his opportunities are opening up. He's just not hitting shots. But you can see what would happen if he's able to hit those shots. And based on his track record, it should catch up with him. But if a team comes calling about Alec Burks and you feel like, well, we've been able to get by without him, we could do better with him, but like we'll take the future asset instead, that's a different situation. Or basically saying like, we've got all of this cap space to take on like a Kelly Oubre. So for example, when Draymond Green went down, I thought, holy crap, that could be the Warriors season right there. Oh, yeah. Fortunately, he comes back, starts the second half. But, if something happens to a team like the Warriors and they say, well, we don't really want to half-ass this. We'd rather keep our pick because it's protected. And we'd rather not have to pay an insane amount in luxury taxes. So then let's ship Oubre out, something along those lines where, again, like the only dynamics I'm really curious about are the margins moves. If the Knicks are really going to take in players purely from a salary standpoint, because the reality is I don't see them making any big moves. And I think that the Derrick Rose trade, if anything, it really instilled more confidence in me because it showed that this was a good player who the Knicks really weren't willing to give up much for.
No.
And they showed some level of prudence, and I'd like to think they continue with that. But it's why I don't see them being big players yet, because it's still, as we continuously say, it's the first year of the Rose administration.
Yeah.
There's no need to rush. For us, it's, the umpteenth or 20 something, 30 something, that goes on and on. Yeah. But for Leon Rose and company, there's no rush. And I think that's the other thing too. When you look at the talent that the Knicks have gotten in the draft, I mean, first headline, of course, by Emmanuel Quickly, but then, and we'll talk about him too, Obi Toppin, and how we're starting to see some progress too. You then think like, okay, well, if we're able to see what they can do with those types of players, then what can they do with other draft picks? And, you always want to take quality over quantity. And we're getting into a different discussion, but the point here is that if you're able to really build it from the ground up and you have confidence in the people around you to do that, then there's no reason to rush it. And, so if you're not going to be buyers and you're not going to be huge sellers, there's a middle ground, and you can still be a competitive basketball team and a winning basketball team to an extent where you're able to develop your core and not have to do anything rash. And I think that's a really, I don't want to say it's a fine line, because I think there's some, like, you can dance around that quite a bit. Because even now the Derrick Rose move, it's not really a win now move. I mean, it's not a win now move. But look at the development that's going on in the second unit, and you can point to that saying like they're winning, but how win now is it?
It's a be better in the moment. Like, so I think we need to separate out these conversations, and I'm thinking of the back and forth that Ian Begley and Zach Lowe had on Zach's podcast last week, which if anybody hasn't listened to, I'd strongly recommend. Their conversation's only about a half an hour. It's very good. And I think so often, I do at least, as fans, get caught up in it has to be one of the poles, the polar opposites. Either you are making tanking moves or you are mortgaging everything for something to, like the Bradley Beal trade, right? Whereas what Leon Rose did with this free agency and what he did again with the Derrick Rose trade is essentially like we are going to try to have our cake and eat it too, in which we're not giving up anything that matters to us. We're not giving up financial flexibility. Forget about future financial flexibility. They don't even give financial flexibility now with these contracts. Alec Burks, $6 million, Nerlens Noel, whatever, $5 million, so we're not giving up anything. The Hornets pick at this rate is going to be, I don't know, 45, 46, something like that. But we are getting better now, which is, I think, those types of moves have this reputation that, like, for a lot of fans, fall under this larger umbrella of, well, you're just getting on the treadmill of mediocrity, to borrow who was that? I'm not sure if it was Kevin O'Connor. Someone from The Ringer came up with that a few years ago. Like, what's the point? The point is to be better in the interim. And I think for most NBA franchises, if all NBA franchises, if you're not a competitor, but you can be competent and be competitive on most nights, that's what you want. No franchise sets out to lose games intentionally. And where there are pivots that you could start to do that in the last 10 to 15 games, play the young guys, this, that, and the other thing, like, that's a conversation for then. Like, even, and we talked about this, it seems like forever ago now, but like Steve Mills and Scott Perry did not intend to go out and win 17 games 2 years ago. They thought that was going to be a 30-win team. They were very wrong. In any case, like, this is, I think, what you want to see. And if the downfall of it is we're not going to be guaranteed a top 5 pick, we probably, the odds, let me rephrase that, the odds do not say that we are likely to end up with a top 5, 6, 7 pick. I think that's okay if you believe in your front office and you believe in their ability to evaluate talent and then develop that talent once it's here, which is why, for me, like, if, like, the people you referred to start the show about the pro tankers being the only ones who are upset, I don't think that's a tenable position. And maybe that's me being naive, but that's kind of how I feel.
Yeah, I would say also that the beauty of having a player like Derrick Rose and subsequently winning as a result of it is you make your team that much more appealing to prospective free agents.
Yes.
Because we know how much cap space the Knicks are going to have. But this idea of, like, you could go to a moribund team that was crap, or you could go to a team that's on the rise that has some promising young talent, and you could actually show, like, hey, this is what it looks like when we have a lead guard who can excel. And that's in the second unit. So if you are appealing to a point guard who's out there and saying, like, so look at what we can do in the second unit, now think about what we can do with you in the first unit, in the starting lineup, or to, a shooter of some sort. The Knicks need some backcourt help, especially in the starting backcourt.
Hold on, let me Google Mike Conley's age. Keep talking.
33, but that's all right. At least he will be next year. The idea
possible NBA All-Star Mike Conley. By the way,
it would be very deserved.
He's absolutely in the conversation.
Yeah.
Note that.
So, we're getting some sort of shooter who could be out there being like, well, look at what we're assembling, and we can partner you with maybe it's Emmanuel Quickley, maybe it's another point guard, whoever it might be. Like, there are going to be opportunities for you, and we're going to start winning. It's going to be on the rise, as demonstrated by what we've been able to do in 1 year. And that's a really awesome thing to do. And I seem to recall, I think I've got the second name right, but I remember hearing at some point, like, maybe, I don't know, in the last year or two, where it was like players were asked which players they love and respect without a doubt. And there were two guys that came to mind. Again, the first one I believe was Jamal Crawford, and the second guy was Derrick Rose.
That sounds right. Yeah.
And so it's I think that players look at other situations, and that they could look at, if they respect Derrick Rose, they look up to Derrick Rose, especially the younger guys. There's a way where it just changes who you are. It changes your brand. It changes your vibes. It actually matters when the time comes. And it's right now, it's kind of like a product. The competition against the Knicks has obviously been lackluster. I mean, you could say really all of the games that they played this past week, all 3 of them, and even the prior Heat game, the Heat are a better team on paper, but they're just, they just haven't put it together yet.
I think those Heat games, I think the Heat are coming on. And I know the Heat just got smoked by Utah, but everybody gets smoked by Utah.
I guess the idea of, whether it be COVID, whether it be just, I mean, COVID's probably the number one reason, but, the fact that they are not anywhere close to where they were just in the regular season last year.
Record wise, no, they're not.
Right. They're getting on their way back. But even so, if you want to say that the Heat are a much better team or a better team than the Knicks, the fact that they hung so close, the fact that in the game this week, they were just absolutely destroyed by the Heat getting foul call after foul call. I often don't like saying, well, the refs, were responsible for this, but I don't know how you can look at that game and
they were jobbed.
And say that they weren't getting jobbed. Right. So that sort of idea where if the Knicks really were maybe like one RJ Barrett finish and a couple other, I mean, you could just say the RJ Barrett finish, but even factoring or not factoring in the fact that there were so many other egregious calls out there, a 3-0 week, then,
and a 500 record.
Right. We're looking at 14-14 team. And suddenly it's like the Knicks can't lose with Derrick Rose. So, it's refreshing to be able to talk about it, even if the competition the last 2 games was weak, because, and I just quickly, not Emmanuel, but just in general, I think Washington is truly the place where young Knicks players' careers like go downhill. First, we get the Frank 2010 game, and then of course the season ends like 2 games later, a game later.
The Hawks game was two nights later. Yeah.
Yeah. And then you get Mitchell Robinson having a career night. I mean,
let's say what it is. It was the best he's ever looked.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I mean, he was probably going to get something like 20 and 20. He was going to feast. And of course, breaks his hand, boxer's fracture, out for 4 to 6 weeks.
4 to 6 weeks, which whether it's 4 or 6 is going to make a difference. Yeah, that's a pretty. Let's not go to Washington anymore. Nothing good happens in the nation's capital.
No.
Okay, moving on. Here's the thing. We 2 things. One, we've kind of glossed over the Robinson injury so far, and that's because I just in my bones, I think they will be able to withstand this, and I think they'll be able to withstand it. And I went through it on the post game after the Washington win. The schedule is favorable from now until the break. We obviously don't know what the schedule is going to be after the break. They don't play a lot of really good offensive teams, and I think we saw last night. Noel does not, and I'm referring to the Rockets game. Noel does not protect the rim anywhere like Mitch does, and he doesn't have the length and just like kind of gravitational aura about him to almost single-handedly stymie pick and rolls. He is, and Tibbs touched on this after the game briefly, he can do some different things. I think he's a little bit better when like coming up to guard the screen, like, maybe hedging, trapping, whatever you want to call it. So I do think they're going to have some cards to play here with Noel as the starting center. And he also, blocks his fair share of shots and he swipes a ton of balls too. So that's one thing. I don't think they're going to fall off as much as maybe some people think. And the other thing in regards to these 2 games against the Wizards and the Rockets, yes, the Knicks kicked the shit out of 2 teams that they should have kicked the shit out of, but when's the last time we could say, the Knicks have 2 games against teams that they should kick the shit out of, and they actually did what they're supposed to do? Like, that's to me yet another indication of how they're different this year. As far as whether anything that's happened over the last week, the Derrick Rose acquisition, the Mitch injury, the fact that they now have a positive net rating, how you doing, should change how they approach anything from here on in. I don't like. Is there anything they're going to do? Like, what's the craziest thing you could see? Like, I mean, really, is there any other thing other than getting in the Beal conversation, if and when that conversation happens? Like, what else are we looking at for them to do? Even I don't know.
Honestly, yeah, I'm not sure. I don't see them making some big move right now.
What other big? I can't even like. Is Beal?
It's like Beal and Levine. That's and the thing about Levine is that people kind of speculate that he's going to be moved, and Chicago may have no reason to do that. So yeah, it's really just everyone's always focused on that next star. The moment that James Harden was traded, Kevin O'Connor came out with an article almost instantaneously. It was like Bradley Beal, the next star on the market. And it's like,
but he wasn't wrong.
He wasn't. But it's this idea, of course, where it's like we always have to focus on which player needs to be quote unquote freed from their environment. And it's like, maybe Washington wants to just try to make it work first. I'm sure they see the writing on the walls. But that doesn't mean that they can't be like, well, we've built around Bradley Beal this long. Let's try to make something work without, going overboard and risk losing him for nothing or for a minimal package. I mean, you're still seeing what he would cost in terms of the layout. I think Stephen Bondi talked to someone who basically broke it down. And I think that something, just while we're on the topic, something that Knicks fans need to keep in mind is, yes, the Knicks have a lot of picks and they have a lot of assets that are available at their disposal. But there's a very big difference between having the quality of assets and having the quantity of assets. Yeah. Because, if I keep seeing the Knicks giving up like 3 picks and not a single one of them is a top 10 pick and adding Frank and Knox into that deal, I'm going to blow my fucking brains out. Please.
Wow,
it's
Jeremy,
not do
cursing on Valentine's Day.
What can I say? It's that sort of thing where you have to just think about, if you want quality, you need to send quality back.
You're not getting Bradley Beal without sending Emmanuel Quickly or RJ Barrett.
Exactly. You're good, and
just stop the conversation. That's
right.
That's,
and you could say Mitchell Robinson, but here's the thing:
Mitch has to get
right. But again, Mitch also has to get paid. What these teams love, especially rebuilding ones, is rookie contracts, because it's cheap labor and you don't have to do much with it. And you've got so many more years of time. Like Emmanuel Quickly, I don't want to trade him. I don't think any fan does. I understand why the idea of a star or a superstar, but with Quickly, you've got 3 more years of him on his rookie contract, making Mitchell Robinson money.
I was about to say there's RJ Barrett rookie contract, and then there's Emmanuel Quickly rookie contract, right, where Quickly is making as much in the next 3 years as RJ Barrett will make like in one season. So
yes, and the other factor is that when you're 2 years away from RJ Barrett being a restricted free agent, which means that you have 6 to 7 years of team control, versus someone like Emmanuel Quickly, where you have 7 to 8 additional years of team control outside of this one. So that's why teams are going to look towards good picks and, young, first year, second year players, because of the fact that they have so much team control. Because look at the fact that we're seeing so many players, either force their way out or be traded, because you want to hang on to those players as long as you can. So to shift back. I thought I said shift, but if I didn't,
stop cursing. Once the floodgates open,
it really does.
Potty mouth time.
I think that with Mitch, it'll be the Knicks survive; they won't thrive. I don't want people to think that Nerlens Noel can just replace him, but I do think it will be interesting to examine what the Knicks do look like without Mitch, because again, this is not me advocating. This is just me saying, in the event that we're looking at the roster and the Knicks want to make changes, we just don't know. That's something that they should consider at least. And I wouldn't do it. I wouldn't trade Mitchell Robinson. I think he means too much to what they're doing.
It's all a negotiation.
Exactly.
This is all a negotiation. These fucking agents are watching this the same way we're watching it.
Of course. So, in that sense of the team can get by, and judging by the schedule, and yes, we don't know the second half schedule exactly yet. I'd be curious as well based on what the timeline is, because they could very easily sell it as closer to that 6-week window of, we just really want to take our time with Mitch, which could affect what they're able to do in the standings, and B, potentially affect just a little bit his contract. But I don't think that's the path they want to go. I think they are much more concerned about, if he's healthy, let's play him because he makes us better, and that's what we want to be. And I cannot knock that train of thought no matter what, because that is how you build a winning team. And
the track record this year is already such that they're not going to hold guys out unnecessarily, because Obi Toppin, if you remember with his injury, he went pretty quickly from, all right, he's back doing 5-on-5 contract drills, to he was available to play and did play within a few days. So I don't think they're going to do anything like we'll slow it. Like, they'll make sure he's healthy, but I think when he's ready to play, he'll be ready to play. Just one more thing on the Beal bit, because you always got to pay attention to this stuff. I don't even consider Oladipo in this conversation. If you're looking around at losing teams and like who's the next guy, it's who might ask out. It's Karl Anthony Towns basically. And he has 3 more years after this one.
He's a free agent in 2024. But see, that's the thing. I think that a big reason.
So 3 more years after this one.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes. Right. 21, 22. Yes, you're right.
Yeah. Okay.
But I think that's a big thing with Beal, is that a big reason why he will probably fetch more than he should, arguably, is that if you look at the market on free agents on trade targets who are available, there's no one who comes close to him. And I don't necessarily mean that in like Bradley Beal's so good
that it's Towns is the next potential guy.
Right. And you usually
ask out. Yeah.
Right. And you usually wait about a year before those guys are free agents. You could do 2, but 2 is asking for a lot, because you'd have to give up a ton to get that type of player. And since there's no young player in 2023 where a team would be willing to trade that player off. Like, I think, again, the big reason why the idea of Beal is like, well, if we don't get Beal, then we have to wait even longer. It's like, well, yeah, okay. So we can wait a little bit longer. That's okay. The timing will line up perfectly. You can figure something out. And I think that just from a team building philosophy, I understand the desire of like, well, getting someone like him in the building, you can get better and then you can improve and then showcase yourself to other free agents. You've got 2 years to make that work. But if something doesn't happen that's great in 2 years, teams feel stale.
A year and a half because he's due.
Right. But I'm saying like, sure. I'm saying like 2023, the first time when there would be a good free agent class. If you bring Bradley and Beal,
I see. Assuming you re-sign Beal, you have 2 years to improve. Okay, I got you.
Right. So you want to say, well, we're building with Beal, and then we can go out and get a free agent. But there's a staleness to that. The idea of like, well, if something doesn't work, it's okay. Yeah, I know Bradley Beal is a Knick. It's the shine kind of wears off a bit. Like, think about the idea of when the Knicks traded for Carmelo Anthony, and then the following offseason, they signed Tyson Chandler because it happened so quickly that it felt like, oh, this is one piece. This is the next piece. Yeah. That time isn't going to be as short. It's going to be longer because of the fact that the talent is not going to be similar. It's going to be a huge gap in talent. And I think the big thing for me is that you avoid that potential staleness by just, if you did this in 2023 of looking at the free agent class and trading for a player who is, in the last year of his contract, where you're able to just pair guys up and build a super team together because guys like joining forces. They don't necessarily like going to another guy's team. It can happen, of course, but the idea of like linking up is very appealing, and players like to have that power of, I'm choosing you. Like Kawhi went to LA and said, I'm choosing to go here, but you're also getting me Paul George. Yeah. Or, the fact that Kevin Durant was like, I'm willing to go to New York. And Kyrie Irving said, I want to go to Brooklyn. Let's go to Brooklyn. And they both went to Brooklyn. That ability to pick your co-star is a power trip, and rightfully so. They deserve to do that at that level. So making sure everything kind of happens in one fell swoop or one window, it makes a lot more sense than like getting your guy and then hoping to bring in the next guy if that next guy likes what he sees and can elevate the team. So that's where I'm at with it.
I think it's really well said. We're going to keep beating this because it's just a lot of people. The more they win, the more people will be like, go trade for Bradley Beal, and it's when there's pushback on that, it has nothing to do with the fact that we don't think Bradley Beal is an amazing player. He is, or that he is not in theory worth whatever the price is going to be for him if the situation is right. I think our point is that the situation right now is not quite right. And you only get one shot with this level of move, right? This kind of all in play, and you better make sure it's the right time to do it. Very, very briefly, I do want to just touch on because they're 13 and 15. The Knicks have a positive net rating. So I'm gonna give you a live quiz. You have not seen the answers to this quiz. All right. There have been 7. This is the 8th season since the 2012-13 year, in which they won 54 games. Of the 7 seasons between that year and this year, how many other times do you think the Knicks have had a even or better net rating this late into the season?
I want to say, I feel like the 17-18 season, the beginning of that, when they were like 18 and 14?
They topped out at 16 and 13 after they beat the Thunder without Kristaps Porzingis in Melo. I think that was Melo's return game to the Garden. Yeah, that was their high point record wise. Yes,
but the fact that you're saying record wise makes me believe that their net rating was negative.
Listen, this is a quiz. I don't know if you've ever taken a quiz before. The answers do not come until you've turned in your paper.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Macri. Yes, I'm going to go with, since the playoff run at this point later, I'm going to go with, let's say, 3 times. That
would be 1 time. So you're only off by 2. Your instinct was correct. during the 2017-18 season, they maintained a positive net rating until, I have it up right here, until game number 37. They were 18-19 when their rating fell to dead even, and then after that, it started to go into the negative. So you let me trick you. When they were 16-13, they absolutely had a positive net rating. So that was the one time they've maintained it this late in the season. The two other times I just want to highlight very briefly. In the 2015-16 season, which was Derek Fisher's last year, they were actually hovering about 500 for a while, but they last had a positive net rating when they were 10-10. So after 20 games, so obviously not as deep into the season as this year. And the only other one for people who were thinking, oh, well, wait a minute, in 2016-17, Derrick Rose's first go around, they were 16-13 after 29 games. They were, but they had that was all fool's gold. And after when they had that 16-13 record, their net rating was minus 2.7. So yeah, there's that's what you should look at. Like, yes, they're 13-15. That was 16-13. This is a better team. This is a better performance. Last thing I want to say before we move on to progress report, and then we'll get out of here with some Valentine's Day love letters. A few people, I feel like on my live streams, and I think maybe even you on a previous podcast, have brought up the comparison to Mike Miller with what Tibbs is doing right now. Is it that different than Miller? I went and looked up what is the best stretch of games that Miller had coaching a Knicks team that had a fairly easy schedule and that, faced some teams that were already starting to tank. It was last year from, make sure I got this right, December 11th, when he got his first win as Knicks coach against the Warriors, until February 8th. So that was a span of 29 games. So one more game than Tibbs has coached. The net rate, do you want to guess what the net rating was for that 29 game span? Again, 13-16 record over that time. So negative about what they have now. What's that?
Negative 2.5?
Negative 3.2, which was 22nd in the league over that time. So, and that's not to disparage Mike Miller, but I just, I am Mr. Let's Give Tibbs His Due, and this is my weekly edition of Let's Give Tibbs His Due.
And I guess this will then be my weekly follow-up of saying, Please. It's not about not giving Tibbs his due. It's just about talking about what was before and what's here now, and still asking the right questions. That's all. We'll go back and forth until we die. It's okay about just this topic. It won't even matter anymore. 40 years from now. The gentle
pushback of Jeremy Cohen. It's like the warm blanket that I need to cover me at night. All right, so let's do.
It's knitted with love for Valentine's Day. So there you are.
It just gets more ridiculous every week. Gosh, oh God, what are we doing here? A quick progress report. All right, who do you want to talk about first? Quickly, Obi, or let's talk about Quickly. Quickly had a hell of a game last night. He had 22 points on 9 shots. I went and looked up when's the last time a Nick had 20 points on 9, or sorry, who's the youngest Nick to have 20 points on 9 shots or fewer? You want to take a guess at who it is? Someone that played for the team this century.
Youngest Nick?
Yeah, youngest Nick to have 20 or more on 9 shots or less.
Man, I'm.
He's a stallion.
Oh, okay. Was it Gallo?
Yeah, it was Gallo. Yeah. Gallo had 2 of the 3, and then our boy Frank had his 20-point game last season. His only 20-point game of his career, as it were. Game on 9 shots.
As his career so far.
Excuse me. He's not playing in Europe yet. Really nice performance from Quickly. I feel like the partnership, I honestly think he might benefit from playing with Rose as much as anyone, because he doesn't have to do all the work with the ball in his hands. And now there's someone else there who can obviously draw some attention. I don't know what else to say there is about Manuel Quickly. He's really good. Anything you want to point out?
Yeah, just the sheer efficiency. I was thinking this, but I didn't necessarily want to tweet it out because I didn't want to rag on Elfrid Payton because he did have a good game. But the idea of I always feel like Elfrid Payton, his success is is like he usually is like a point per shot guy, where maybe he'll finish with like on a good game he'll be what, like 20 points and 19 shots or something along those lines.
Because he doesn't hit threes and he doesn't get to the line.
Right.
So, yeah.
And for Quickly, it's always like we're comparing his points to his minutes. And it feels like he often comes closer to like averaging a point per minute than he does a point per shot. And, just the way that he's able to play so efficiently, having this dual backcourt or this dual point guard backcourt and the opportunities that arise, and how you're able to play with someone who was the youngest MVP of all time and learn from them and grow. It's just fantastic to watch. And we'll talk about him in a second too, but it's hard to identify what is real with Derrick Rose because it has only been 3 games and the presence he's had has been so fantastic that you can't really parse out necessarily what's maybe not going super well or what is going well, but maybe isn't here to stay. The 3-man lineup of Derrick Rose, Obi Toppin, and Emmanuel Quickley has a net rating of 32.9. Ooh. Again, this is a very short sample size. It will definitely change, but like looking at all of the Derrick Rose and Emmanuel Quickley lineups, I mean, every single net rating, the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of them are all positive.
Yep.
And you don't necessarily need to see that to know what they've been able to accomplish together. And it's nice to see that they can work together because, again, before the idea of a Rose trade, it was like, well, you can start Emmanuel Quickley because he's an upgrade over Alfred Payton. And now it's like, well, if this is his role and if this is who he's able to play off of, and this is the kind of offense we're seeing, and especially in transition, then that's okay. Have the minutes be higher. We still want to see him play. It doesn't have to necessarily be starting. So making that addition has been a really nice way for Quickley to grow. And didn't Ian Bagley also tweet? He said they've been together for 59 minutes, and the Knicks have outscored their opponent by 42 points.
Yeah,
in Derrick Rose and Quickley. So that's a great start, no matter what. And I'm sure this second unit, I don't want to say it could beat the first unit because it couldn't, but it'd be competitive.
I think they'd give them a run for their money.
Yeah.
And look, Quickley's averaging 19.2 minutes this year. It's only going to go up. Like you're not going to find many people who would be like demanding. James Wiseman was the second pick in the draft. He's averaging 20.9 minutes. Tyrese Maxey put up 40 something points for Philly already this year. He's averaging 17.2. Sadiq Bey, who's playing for Detroit, a Detroit team that's going absolutely nowhere, is averaging 19.1. Desmond Bane is helping the Grizzlies every night. He's averaging 22.8. Like, this is what rookies average. I mean, it is what it is. I'm
sure though, if we saw better talent in front of him, then there would be less claim to it. But that's the other thing. Getting Rose in the building also kind of stifled that claim. You don't see too many people saying, and I'm not saying that they don't believe it, but you don't see as many people saying start Emmanuel Quickley because we're realizing that he's got a good thing going with Rose in the backcourt and off the bench. So, and
you could still play him. You could decide. It gives Tibbs the ability to be like, I could still play Emmanuel Quickley 30 minutes tonight if I want to, if he really has it going. If he's looking like a rookie and he's struggling a little bit, then it's going to be closer to 15 minutes. Whereas if he starts him, then all of a sudden it's kind of a different situation. I just want to say really quickly on Quickley, there are 6 rookies averaging over a 20 usage rate who have played, just looking at rookies who have played over 15 minutes a night and have played at least 10 games. Here are the true shooting percentages for each of them. So Quickley, by the way, is number 1 in that category. He's 26.5 usage. True shooting percentage of 56.4. Wiseman, who, by the way, is a center, second in that usage, 54.8 true shooting. So worse than Quickley. Anthony Edwards, first pick in the draft, 47.8 true shooting, almost 10 points below Quickley. LaMelo Ball, probably the front runner for rookie of the year right now, 54.8, again, below Quickley. Tyrese Maxey, the aforementioned, 51.3 true shooting. And then Cole Anthony is the only other one above a 20 usage, 46.9 true shooting. So Emmanuel quickly has a higher true shooting than all of those people, which is not bad. And just for shits and giggles, Tyrese Halliburton does have a 63 true shooting. Tyrese Halliburton's really good.
He's been playing nicely.
Which is a good transition to Obi Toppin. Got a nice dunk at the end of the game last night. Had a few other moments. Hit a 3-pointer. I'm not worried about Obi. I think Obi's gonna be. This is yet another week where I'm gonna get on here and be like, I'm not worried about Obi Toppin.
He's taking his time. That's okay.
Yeah, it's fine.
If Julius Randle weren't Julius Randle, I think we could maybe be a little bit more concerned. But Julius is holding down the fort to such a degree that Obi Toppin is confined to a role, and he just has to work in that role, and he's naturally going to get better over time. And he's getting the reps and the attention with especially Derrick Rose that needs to be there. And I think even I've noticed in this post game, he's done a much better job. Every time I see him work in the post, I think back to the article about Anthony Davis and Karl Anthony Towns and Kenny Payne, and how Anthony Davis came to Kentucky and he had no post game, and he worked on it. And Kenny Payne was the reason why. And it's hard not to see that coming together with the Knicks and Obi Toppin. He just looks more confident. There are times where he's very acrobatic and maybe to a fault, but you can see the gears start to move a little bit, and he's just doing a better job in the role he has.
Yeah, completely agree. All you're looking for is signs every game, and we're getting signs. We had some Kevin Knox minutes last night against Houston. Shout out to him. Situational Kevin Knox.
Situational season, yes.
Situational season. And then we've only mentioned his name once or twice this episode. RJ Barrett's struggling a little bit right now. He is maybe forcing a little bit around the rim. The shot is. I think he hit a 3 though last night. Or maybe it was against Washington. He hit a 3 at some point in the last couple of games. He's 20. He's still 20. I think I forget he's 20 sometimes when he has these great stretches, and he had a really, really, really great stretch of games for most of the season until these last couple. I don't know. It's tough because these are the moments where you have to remember that development is not linear always. Guys, it's ebbs and flows. So, yeah. I don't know what else there is to say about RJ Barrett, but he's in a little bit of a down period, but that's okay. It's fine, right?
I would say it reflects well on the Knicks to this past week. I'd say the last 4 games have been down, but if you look at those 4 games and how either close they've been against a good enough team or how they've been blowouts against not great teams, it's nice to see that it doesn't fall on the shoulders of a 20-year-old to save this team. There's talent around him that can pick up the slack for when he struggles. And, other guys are going to struggle while he thrives. And it's a constant push and pull, but if you are in a situation where everything clicks, I mean, that's obviously what you are hoping for, but the opportunity to say all right, he's just having down games. He's in a slump. That's okay. We can pick him up. We can do a better job, and we can still get the win. So, again, yeah, I am also really not worried because it's more the consistency that and I don't even want to say I'm worried about it, but it's a concern where he's very streaky in his nature. So hopefully he's not quite moving forward and he's working out the kinks. And I have no doubt that he will be able to get back onto a consistent track. It's just then, is he having multiple get down games? Is he just, up and down every other game? How's it going to work? That's what I'm curious about.
And we should note RJ Barrett has played now with this weekend's games, 84 career NBA games. So he has played a little bit more than a season. I actually want to give a shout out to, intentionally or otherwise, the Knicks for this is how you develop a player. Accountability remains high at all times. He still needs to defend. He still needs to make the right play. You give him the opportunity to succeed. If he's not succeeding in the offensive end, it doesn't completely kill you because you're not giving him more than he could handle. Had a rough game against Houston, only took 8 shots. Didn't need to force it. So I think we constantly talk about how do you develop, what's the right line to toe. I think it's like culture, when you see it. I think they're developing RJ Barrett just fine. Okay. Last thing before we get out of here, we are recording this on a Valentine's Day. I have loved this team since I was 10 years old. I have had many individual loves in my Knicks history. I texted you about an hour ago. I'm like, let's each give our top 1 or 2 or 3, Nick loves over the course of our lives. And I was thinking about this, and I struggled with it because it's like I was around for Patrick Ewing, so do I say Patrick Ewing number 1? But that seemed disingenuous. So I feel like it has to be more like someone that just hit you in that weird way that you can't really fully explain. And a few names came to mind, but I want to turn to you first. Is there 1 or 2 names that you want to shout out as your Nick Valentine's Day shout outs?
Sure. I'm trying to think who to start with. I'll start with from the last really good team, one of the only really good teams I've ever seen in Knicks history. I'm going to give a happy Valentine's Day to the GOAT, Pablo Prigioni.
Okay.
Just that type of player who's able to make the subtle plays, really get under his opponent's skin on the defensive end. He was so, I'm trying to think what the perfect word to describe him is.
He was a pest.
There was a peskiness to him that was just so admirable. And to come to the league at 36, 37 years old and still make that kind of impact and be in so many ways the glue to a very good team that should have gone further, but we won't talk about that. It's a shame that he wasn't able to continue here. Of course, rebuilds happen and he was dealt, but I wish him all the best in Minnesota because that team is just absolute garbage. And
so mean.
It is, but it doesn't have to be. They need a new coach. That's a start, and maybe a new front office, and then maybe clean house, and then maybe rebuild. It doesn't matter. But yes, I'm gonna say Paolo Prigioni is the number 1 player, Nick, in my heart in recent years.
I'll give, as my daughter peeks her head out, I'm going to give 2 shout outs for that team, 2 Valentine's Day shout outs. One is, have you ever had actually, I shouldn't ask you to air your dirty laundry on this podcast. I was going to say, have you ever had a relationship where it was a dysfunctional relationship all the way through, but you still have fond memories of it? Do you have any of those?
No.
Wow. Okay.
There was one that no.
Okay, I have one that was both dysfunctional, but I remember it fondly. So happy Valentine's Day shout out to J.R. Smith. And then there are other relationships that it's like a movie where there's never nothing ever really bad happens. Nothing's ever really at stake. It's mostly just like a feel good story. Which the emotional gravity isn't there, but you still enjoy it because it's a good time. And for that analogy, I'm going to go happy Valentine's Day to Steve Novak. And just 2 more for me. I got to give one to Jeremy Lin. 10-year anniversary, right? Yep. Crazy. It's been 10 years. My goodness. Especially Valentine's Day, right? The shot against Toronto. God, crazy that was 10 years ago. So happy Valentine's Day to Jeremy Lin. And then last but not least is a guy that I don't even know if you know who this is. Do you know who Anthony Bonner is? It's okay if you don't.
I don't think
There's no reason you should. He averaged 5 points a game, if that. He was on the Knicks for 2 years in the mid-90s. But for whatever reason, 10, 11-year-old me, when I watched those mid-90s Knicks teams, he came in and he's like, I'm trying to think of a comparison. He was like a much less talented version of Anthony Mason. If that's probably the best comparison. And I could look up his stats right now, but it's not even worth it because he was not a good player, but he just came in and he always seemed to try really hard. And whenever I think back to those mid-90s teams, Anthony Bonner is the guy that comes to mind. Is man, I really loved me some Anthony Bonner. So happy Valentine's Day, Anthony Bonner. Any other Valentine's Day Knicks shout outs for you?
Yeah. Excuse me. I'll give two more.
Okay.
I'll say the first one is happy Valentine's Day to Mr. Landry Fields.
Of course.
Jeremy Lin doesn't happen if not for Landry Fields' couch.
Need that couch.
We have to keep that in mind. Just the talk about, a player who came out of nowhere. You find a late pick in the second round or mid pick in the second round. Had a nice little dalliance with him. Went off. I think he was rookie of the month for a month. I have this really fond memory of, God, it must have been 2011. It was probably 10 years ago, January 2nd, 2011, where we had the Knicks play the Indiana Pacers, and I went with a friend of mine.
How do you remember this date?
I'm really good with dates for the most part.
God bless.
Long-term memory, I'm really good at. Short-term, I'm not as good at. But I just remember Landry having a really fun game, and my friend and I were waiting outside to see the fans, and Landry Fields comes out of the car with his girl, and we ran with the car, and Landry Fields just laughing hysterically and saying what's up to us. And, it's just like those kind of moments where as a young fan, it's just like you like seeing players care about you. And it was really nice to see. It was like a very short, ephemeral moment in time for both of us, because his career went downhill, unfortunately. And then, you grow up and you become less enamored with and infatuated with players, and you get more mature about it. And I'd say the last one I'll say is, of course, Mon Petit Prince.
I was about to say we have to both.
We have to listen again. He's obviously a very controversial player for a lot of fans, and I guess it's a sort of thing where when you look at what you want him to be, just literally a Swiss Army knife off of the bench who can give you 15 minutes of action, can defend some of the opponent's best players and do it at a good job. And as we're hoping to see when he's able to come back from this knee injury, is just like knocking down the threes that he was hitting very early in the game. Or very early in the season, excuse me. So, again, like you want to see the players that you have drafted thrive, because it shows that there's a process involved. And for a dude who has lasted this long, no matter what happens to him at the trade deadline or in free agency or whatever, he's lasted this long. He's outlasted, so many executives and coaches that it's just remarkable to be able to do that. I don't know what secrets he has, but they must be plentiful. That or he's just so goddamn beautiful that they don't want to trade him, because who wants to be the guy who traded away Frank Ntilikina? So I hope he gets better.
Couldn't be me.
No, definitely not me. Again, like when you look at the photos that the Knicks have posted of him, the knee brace looks big. And I think a lot of people have thought he's out of the rotation because he's a situational player. He might be, but you also have to consider the fact that it might just still be injury, and he's having to come back from that. And so, very curious to see how the front office addresses him, what his interest in the league is, if they're just willing to trade him for even a late second round pick, or if they'd rather just hold on to him at that point and sign him to a cheap contract. I don't know, but he's still on this team right now, and I love him, and I hope he stays. And happy Valentine's Day, Frank.
Happy Valentine's Day, Frank. You have represented a flickering candle amidst the darkness over the last several years in our hearts. So we thank you for that. Even if it doesn't happen here, we'll always have Paris.
Honestly, as you said, flickering candle, it kind of came to mind where it's like, where we talked about candles, maybe a podcast or two podcasts ago. Frank I think his new nickname should be the Menorah, because like the Maccabees, he's just that oil's going, baby. It's going nonstop. It does not burn out. You've once again left me speechless.
The Menorah. That's okay. The Menorah. Yet another nickname for Frank. Well, this was fun. Definitely a worthy expenditure of time away from our significant others on Valentine's Day. Menorah. Jeremy, anything from you before we get out of here?
No, I think that'll be all. We gotta do our progress. Well,
our schedule. Our predictions. So are we? So we're not doing the next 10 games. We're just doing this week, right?
Correct. And
Okay.
by the way, it's I mean, you won no matter what because you had 2-1, but I was this close to being 3-0 if I had decided to go that direction instead of 1-2. Because with that Heat game, I mean,
yeah, but you picked 1 and 2.
I
right?
did. I'm just right, but that's why I was showing you like why I wouldn't pick 3-0 because it took that much for it to just completely stink it up. But
this is
I'm okay
true.
with losing that. That's all right. I can live with it.
Sometimes losses are wins.
That's true.
Okay, so we got 3 games.
Mm-hmm.
No, wait, we do have to pick. No,
we don't.
Well, they'll have played 31 games when we record our next podcast.
Yeah, because the Clippers screwed us over. Because the Clippers played that game and we had to push it back one more.
Okay, so whatever. We'll make our next. We'll predict for the rest of the first half of the season when we do next Sunday. But for right now, it is up to me to pick this week, which is home tonight, Monday, for you listening, versus Atlanta. Then on the road to Orlando after a day off, and then 2 days off, and then that's Saturday. San Antonio at home, which kicks off a 5-game homestand. I'm having notions, Jeremy. I'm having notions.
Are you now?
I am having notions. But I'm gonna go. You know what? I'm gonna leave the door open to you. I'm gonna give it to you on a silver platter.
I'm not gonna take it because
I'm gonna go 2-1.
Okay, wait. There are 4 games.
No, the next game, there's 3 games. Monday, Atlanta. Wednesday at Orlando. Saturday, San Antonio home. The game after that is Sunday night, which we'll record. Oh no, we may record after that.
We have in the past.
So then versus Minnesota at home. Oh wow, now I really have notions. All right, 3-1.
2-2. I was thinking 3-1, but I mean, I'm not.
I was thinking 3-0 for the. Okay, so 3-1 for me, 2-2 for you. This is gonna be interesting.
Yeah,
this is gonna be very interesting.
The Magic, I feel like could be a trap game to a slight extent. And like, kudos to the Knicks for even having a trap game on their schedule. But that idea of where because the Magic went into Sacramento, and of course Sacramento didn't have De'Aaron Fox, so that could have been a huge factor. But they played really well on the backs of Vucevic, and I'm really curious how the Knicks are going to match up against him because even with Mitch, they would struggle against him. But without him, I mean, are we going to see Taj minutes? Is he going to be the bruiser who's setting up against Vooch? Because that could be pretty brutal. Or Noel, who doesn't have that core strength to keep up with him. So, and the Spurs are a good team. So, I think you'll win, but I feel good about 2-2 at the same time. I too have notions, John.
Yeah, we all have notions, Jeremy. The net ratings, this is cleaning the glass. Net ratings over the last 2 weeks. Orlando 27th, minus 10.7. Atlanta 28th, minus 12.4. Minnesota 21st, minus 1.3. And then San Antonio 16th. Plus 1.1. By the way, the Knicks net rating over the last 2 weeks, 9th in fucking basketball, plus 3.5. Give the man coach of the year right now. Give Leon Rose executive of the year. Give us podcast of the year. Give yourselves a pat on the back for fans of the year. This is one for all of us. Thank you for listening to another episode of the Knicks Film School Podcast. We will be back with you for another episode very soon. Don't forget, look out on your streams for the 300th episode of the Knicks Film School Podcast coming up later this week. I've teased this already. You're gonna want to listen to this one. It's good. That's all I'm going to say. Rate, review, subscribe, the whole thing, and we will talk to you soon.